Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant.
My name is Niels Tudor Winter, and I'm the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. Don't forget that there is a The Grant mock-up for the best comment, question, or shared insights on the communication strategies. Check out my new short series on communication strategy for details. Digging into the Brussels bubble is an important part of this podcast initiative. Simply, I want to fold out to the community across Europe how different organizations work within the Brussels ecosystem and fold out why it can be beneficial to be present in Brussels. INESC is a large Portuguese private research organization. It has been present in Brussels for a few years and is quite ambitious in relation to connecting their research teams to the Brussels plug. Ricardo Migueis is the head of office at the INESC Brussels Hub. And he's one of these persons that have been in Brussels for ages and know the ins and outs of how to work the city. Of course, I had to take him into the virtual podcast studio for a talk about how INESC is approaching Brussels. And when you put two old Brussels rats together, there's a lot to talk about. In other words, this is a double episode. In the first half, we dug into the reason why they have a Brussels office, how it functions, and the important connection back home. Here in this second half, we move into the lobbying and project facilitation. Please enjoy.
The Grant. Slowly, it's a very nice conversation, but I just need to see how we're going to capture the last. Because actually, we've been talking a lot about the last two, at least the lobbying block we've been talking about. Talking about influence and lobbying part. If we just zoom in a little bit on that, because we actually been touching it, and you've been touching it here and there, talking about the structure. It's sometimes difficult to capture this in a rundown because it's in and out of each other, right? But so
Absolutely.
you already mentioned that. So you already sort of you outlined it for the listeners and me. So you have made the structure of a management board. You have 5 managers there that you coordinate with, understanding strategic priorities. How often do they meet?
Formally, for decision, twice a year.
Okay, but that's not a lot.
No. But then
So
I
you
articulate.
coordinate with them individually, or how?
Yeah, there's a chair and a vice chair, which are the executive committee of the board, right?
Yeah.
And that's these are elected. They kind of go around the different institutes, right? And then, of course, I speak with everyone because it's only 5. So, I mean, I have a chair and a vice chair who I articulate with, who need to be people that are always available and for me, and they are. And again, I have a huge privilege of working with these very, very, very brilliant minds that I work with. But yeah, so they meet twice a year. I articulate with the chair and vice chair more often, but with all of them either via email, either because I go to their institutions and they're always kind enough to at least take a little bit of time for me, and that's how we fine tune and we respond to the diversity of challenges that different institutions of different sizes with different support structures addressing different areas sometimes. That's how I address that diversity.
How do you do the process of identifying, shaping, and for the use in Brussels where you need to put the seats? How do you pick up those priorities? How do you have processes of identifying what you're supposed to have an opinion about as a research organization? What is strategically important for you? Do you have a formalized process around that? You understand?
Well,
To shape it and we decide that we go for this and this and this within this and this and this areas. And Ricardo, you play the piano in Brussels in the technology platforms or other, like partnerships, whatever, to try to put it and place it.
Well, as you know very well, it's not that simple.
No.
I wish it was.
I'm just.
I mean, yes, there is a certain strategic dimension to each institute that is passed on to me, but it's not that simple. I mean, so I've given you our Scandinavian side. Let me give you our Dutch side.
Yeah, rough.
Yeah, well, not necessarily. Yeah, well, I'm just
sorry, Dutch out there.
half joking here. But my Dutch friends would say, "You're paid to think about that, aren't you?" I have the privilege not only of working with brilliant people, but I have the privilege of having this helicopter view that probably no one else in the organization has. I mean, we have a holding that also, and the president of the holding is a brilliant man, a brilliant former researcher and president of the Instituto Superior Técnico, one of the best technical universities in Europe and even in the world in certain areas. And Erlindo, he knows the system very well. I mean, for many years. But apart from Erlindo, and maybe with updates at operational level and more often than Erlindo, I have a view and a perspective, or I have the obligation to have that view and perspective that requires of me to highlight and filter what is important and what is not. And then, of course, they might disagree with me, but that's fine. That's their task. It's to agree or disagree. And then we get into that discussion. But the filter has to come from me and from the work that I do with them and with their teams.
Okay, good. Do you sometimes run into different interests from some of your research institutes?
Every day.
And how do you balance that in Brussels?
It's what I've been saying. I mean, it's you don't balance it only in Brussels. You balance it in the type of processes, initiatives, and projects that you initiate. Some of those processes, initiatives, and projects that I initiate in the office are transversal to all the institutes. Or imagine you're talking about a university, would be transversal to all the faculties, right? Some of them have to be specific. And as anywhere else, the diversity that I've spoken about of resources, of size, of capacity to answer needs different approaches. So sometimes you need to adapt the process that helps. So my role is to help that institute to seize an opportunity, right? Or to, before seizing an opportunity, maybe even to understand the importance of X and Y, or to gain more visibility, or to help their researchers getting more capacity in a certain domain related with European affairs. So it is, and that's why I've spoken about granularity.
So in relation to the places in Brussels, the environment, the key fora of your attention to place seats, to alliances, and so on and so forth, with supporting a full research organization with the few resources of an office, how do you deal with that? Is it only you that goes? Because Massimo from NTNU, for instance, he has aligned himself with sort of the similar ways that you have. He also has main points of contacts within different areas, and they go then themselves to the meetings in Brussels. And sometimes he covers for them. But do you cover everything, or do you have people coming up from Portugal to the meetings? So how have you structured that? Because it's a lot to cover. Yeah?
It's the same as every other institutions. If they can come, that's the preferable thing. I cannot go to a thematic meeting in quantum because I don't know anything about quantum, right? I can go to the meeting. I can take notes. I'm not stupid. I can report back. But I'm not going to have a presence that is going to be of a technical contribution level that could be, and that can result in opportunities as well. When people see that you're good, that you understand, that you can take initiative, etc. Right? So we try to mobilize people to go to all those meetings.
Now that's the practicality around being there, like the presence. How about picking up, resuming what's been going on, getting it through the machine in Portugal? So what do we need? We need an opinion here and here and here, and then formulating, okay, we put in what we want to do here, and then going back to the system from the Brussels Hub. How much involved are you in that?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it is important. When I began this mission, I did that a lot more because I tried to answer all the public consultations of work programs and all of that. I've honestly given that up because I don't have the resources to do it. First reason,
exactly,
and I have to prioritize. And also people get tired of getting so many requests.
Not you again.
so you gotta be pragmatic and look at things and say, okay, hold on a second. Let's give a step back and see what's really important here. So yeah, I identify a few things that are important. Sometimes people don't see immediately why I identified certain things, but more and more they are saying that. And also I've tried to make some initiatives where I mobilize people to write articles that are published in Science Business or other media outlets, but that are not written by me. I've written a few to give an example, but then now I've asked a few other people that are high level to give that example, and hopefully in a couple of years I will have more people capable of writing those articles. Why are those articles important? In my point of view, it's not even because of the visibility. That's point number 2. The main importance is because you ask one researcher to do that and he will panic. You could ask him to find a cure for cancer and he would not panic so much. But when you ask him to relate that to EU policy, he doesn't know where to start. So that's the importance of those articles, is to overcome that barrier.
Yeah, and you know what? It's one of the most important roles for the intersections in Brussels. Sorry for calling you an intersection, but that's what the offices are. Yeah?
I've been called worse.
It is the translating role of not only about being what we talked about here, that you facilitate the connection, you facilitate collaboration, you facilitate in getting a point of view into somewhere, but it's also translating how Brussels works, understanding what people want and then being able to convey that message to the Brussels lingo and how things work in Brussels, and then vice versa. When it comes from Brussels, not just making the explanatory notes in the margin, right? For people, this means this, and this means this. So I did that a lot.
Yeah, and that has another effect, which is when they go back home and they see in their strategic plan of their institute that they have this and this goal of greening and digitalization by 2030, whatever, they will be able to relate that much more easily to what they are doing and framing that in a much more easier way, in a much more granular way, in a much more detailed way. And then when they read that introductory part, more related to policy of the work program, they will be able to understand it better. And so that when they're going to write the proposal, they are going to be able to write better and to be a better researcher at the end. And at the same time, they will influence the people around them. So it is a chain.
The rings in the water.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so linear, of course, but it is a chain.
If only it was.
Yeah.
But I think the time. Oh, you know it yourself, podcasting, because I also want to ask that if you just flag that in the end of the episodes, which I did not put in the rundown it. Just shortly on project facilitation, because normally that's out of just, you said yourself, it's pre project work that you do. But you mentioned it a couple of times, so like you do. My best guess is that you do pick things up on the way. That once in a while you manage to facilitate concrete proposal participation for an institute because of the other work you do.
Yeah, but it's mostly large things. It's mostly working on like integrating public-private partnerships or building up a node of a research infrastructure, or in some cases it has happened to me. I've contributed to bring partners to help identify partners to a few proposals. It happened to me a lot of times already, but that's not what I am there to do.
No,
I mean, I think that anyone that needs to go and search for partners shouldn't do the project. I know I'm being very mean.
And you know what? But what is common for all you officers for research organizations in Brussels, that's not. Then you should be indeed 5 people, because it's one job by itself to do intelligence for a full research organization, be it public or private, finding out core places to go, finding out core collaboration partners that do European projects all the time, the most important, that takes a lot of resources, quite resource intensive.
In one thematic area, now imagine for a whole research organization.
I actually did this when I was working for the Danish offshore wind sector. That was part of my role, to both pick up proposals, identify funding for the sector, and then I also did lobby work towards the Horizon 2020. That's why I understand a lot about these conversations, because it's a matter of dosing your resources. How do you attend to it? And there's a lot of resource efficiency. You have to think about that all the time. So,
yeah, indeed.
This means I just want to talk a little bit about the podcast, because
all right.
My dear listeners, Ricardo here, he has launched a podcast on the ecosystem in Brussels. But can you share yourself the mission, why you're doing it?
Right. So the initial idea is twofold. One, I have to do, because I no one obliges me to, but I consider it's an important part of my job to be completely updated about what's going on, right? So I read and I do a clipping, and I have to read attentively and I have to understand. so I started doing this clipping and all this thing. So I decided I'm going to do a podcast bi-weekly with a newsletter we send. We started by sending that newsletter internally, and then we started having requests externally to our organization. So now it's open. It's even on LinkedIn, and it's open to everyone that has that clipping, and then has a analytical focus, which I use to write. But then if I write, it's a major piece of text that no one's going to read.
Exactly.
Right? So what I said is, okay, so if I write, it's going to be like a 10-minute or 15-minute monologue, which I can do, and I can make it sound fluid, because I think I have that capacity. And then, so I started with that. And then the other thing is, I'm a podcast lover. I love podcasts. I've learned a lot with podcasts in several areas. I love audiobooks. I've listened to a lot of audiobooks, from when I'm walking the dog to sports or whatever. And I thought, I want to have the opportunity, and I feel the need to pass on as a complementary to the already service that I am doing for the INESC Institutes, and externally now as well, of the newsletter. I feel the need to go deep into certain subjects, and subjects. Some of them I know very well. And I've just made an interview with some people on SME access to infrastructures that is going to be published soon.
Great,
for example. But in that one, I know that theme very, very, very well, because I've worked with infrastructure. I was national delegate. I was chairman of the board of several infrastructures, etc. So I know that theme very well. But then. Before that, I recorded a podcast on the IPSE cloud and edge computing. And for starters, I didn't know very well, and being very honest, how an IPSE functioned. How it was funded, and what was the. I had a vague view that I believe that most people have. Right, that they know how more or less how it is funded and what is the goal. But I wanted to understand very, very clearly what was the goal, how it was functioning, and so Alberto Marti, which was my last invitee, it was the latest podcast. It's already out. He agreed to be on the podcast. He actually is an excellent person to speak with. You should invite him one day. He's really, really brilliant. And I've learned in the study prior to the podcast, in the preparation for the podcast, and I am now able to explain to people in my organization and wherever how an IPSE works, what is the dynamic of policy, of governance, and of stakeholder engagement that leads to an IPSE is an important project of common European interest, for those that don't know. And how goals are defined, and what is the role of the European Commission, and how its implementation is supposed to go, because this one just started. So that was a huge learning.
I love it, Ricardo, because you know what? We need more sound. We need more sound in different corners, all kinds of different corners within this field.
I fully agree.
It's and I am still flabbergasted how few podcasts there are within this field.
They don't exist. Almost. I mean, there's your podcast with all. I mean, with some consistency, right? So you're going into episode 133, as far as I saw in our prep sheet. So I mean, you've got consistency, right? And that's the difficult part. I've just started, but yeah, it's consistency is key. And you've got your podcast, and you're doing an excellent job that covers from the very nitty-gritty stuff on how to write a proposal to all the satellite issues of research and innovation,
Try.
and that's really a valuable work, and I know it's a niche. So, but I mean, there's people. Do you know what? Let me share this with you. I have the feeling that this is one of those areas where you are more. You are supposed to have the highest capacity of critical thinking, right? In research and innovation.
Uh-huh.
And it's probably, if you take out police forces and defense because they cannot open their mouth by law, it's probably the sector in the world, in the whole of the capitalist system, that thinks the least about itself. And has the least capacity of looking itself in the mirror.
Probably, yeah.
So, yeah, podcast also wants to contribute to change that a little bit. It's my little stone in the castle.
And you know what? I really, really hope that you because consistency and not breaking the neck, so to say, on podcasting. That's one. I saw the figures once, how many podcasts that die, so to say, after the first 10 episodes.
Yeah.
And I really hope that you don't. I really hope that practicalities and your life is and your work, that you manage to keep it rolling, because it's so important that we get more sound, more fora here within podcast communities about all kinds of corners of EU R&D. There's so much to discuss. There's so much to talk about. That's my byline to my title. I'm just a corner. I have an approach, I try to do as much as I can, but there's an immense amount of things that I will never be able to cover that is so interesting within this world. So, yeah, no, I support you everything I can, and for everybody who has interest, it is it's called the Insider.
The Insider, the Insider.
And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put a link to the podcast, a landing page. You have a landing page?
We do have a landing page, yes.
Good. So I will put a link to that in the episode, on the episode side of this episode, so everybody can go in and find it. And what I'm gonna do for you too as well, Ricardo, because I made a podcast hub for the same reason of support, where I have put podcasts related or with overlapping with what I do. So I'm going to put it in there, so everybody, and that's flagged also if you didn't know out there, dear listener, that I have on my platform, thegrand.eu, there is a podcast hub. So there you will find podcasts, and they're not just in English. There's Ilaria that has an Italian one, and there's Thomas that has a Slovak one. And now you have another English speaking one with a certain frequency here every 2 weeks.
We can speak Portuguese if you want.
But that's your choice, Ricardo. So that's that. Now, we do have to wind this up. Thanks for coming around. I'm just going to... you did it. You mentioned the toughest challenge, but I'm going to have it in the end here anyway. So now I will say, what is the toughest challenge in developing a podcast at the same time as being a director in Brussels? Hit me.
Yeah, well, let me put it this way: the toughest challenge as a representative in Brussels of a research and innovation organization, really my serious answer, and that would be my first, because I think that is transversal to all the organizations, that all the representations, is people retention. I think that the stability or the instability that we have from the constant rotation is not good. So that's one thing. So that's one bad thing of being in Brussels. Actually, I know that the organizations that are not in Brussels are not so affected by that as the ones in Brussels. Actually, it's quite funny.
They just don't see it. The point is, because I know, Ricardo, I know from some of my old contacts still working in the representative system throughout Brussels, that the nature of Brussels, people come in a couple of years and they go back to where they live. That's the nature of Brussels. People come when they're young, then they stay for some years, and when they get a kid, they want the kid to grow up where they come from. Stop all these kind of things.
What a friend of mine, how a friend of mine described it?
What?
I'll tell you. It's Erasmus for adults.
Yeah. It's funny because it's true. So the segment that stays, so there you are related. That's management and salaries. And I cannot imagine that you would be a bad manager, Ricardo. So probably it's the level of salaries, and they can always go to the commission.
Well, that's the point. We cannot compete with the commission. So
exactly.
I've just lost a very important person in my team for not the commission, but another European big network, and we cannot compete with them either. I mean, networks with hundreds of thousands of associates, we cannot compete with. And so that's what it is. So we just have to assume our roles as incubators, but it is a huge challenge.
Yeah. Because consistency matters.
Because consistency matters, yes, and also
continuity,
accumulated
understanding understanding of the complexity of both strategic and practical. Learning, getting your stakeholders under the skin, and knowing exactly which buttons to push and turn. That requires experience, continuity.
That's why I'm subcontracting more and more of what I can subcontract, actually. Because I don't run the risk of losing the person, right? So it's has been one of my major choices there, and the major challenge of doing a podcast is time management. Alongside that, all the other things, but I just love it. And
securing episodes.
Your generosity in inviting me is huge. I loved it. I think that we're still gonna work together as we've spoken before in some future podcasts. And,
this is not the last time.
No.
We will do.
You're gonna hear from us. You're gonna hear from us.
Yeah. It's gonna be nice. That's that I can promise you. No, I have to land the plane because we're way over time.
Running out of fuel. Yeah.
Dear listeners, thank you for listening to that. I hope you enjoyed this peek view into the world of another one of the Brussels ecosystem representative office. If you do like this, there's much more for you. Go to my platform, my website, thegrant.eu. There you'll find lots of episodes related to research, the research world, but also research in Brussels, representation, and so on. So check it out. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe to my email list. This is the way I build up as an independent podcaster and become stronger and stronger. So if you have any sympathy with what I'm doing, please, by all means, subscribe to that. And finally, connect with me on LinkedIn. Both you can connect with me personally, Niels Tudor-Winter, but you can also go in and connect to my page, The Grant, where I try to channel the information that comes through here, because there's a lot of other stuff also coming through my personal LinkedIn profile. So that's that. I've become quicker and quicker with these exits. As you know, as a podcaster, you need to leave a message and you need to leave an action.
Yeah, I'm always learning, Nils. I'm an amateur by your side. I mean, I'm just the message kid.
I did my theory. I did my reading. I have my book, my strong book that I'm following, and it's like this. So it's proven by podcasters for decades what works and what doesn't work. So.
I want to see that lab experiment that they did to prove that.
Ricardo, thank you so much for dropping by the virtual podcast studio. Let's say goodbye to the dear listeners. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Grant. All the Grant episodes have their own site on the Grant website. You will find a link to the episode notes where you listen to your podcast. On the site for this episode, you will find a link to Ricardo's personal LinkedIn site and to INESC. Further, there will be a link to more episodes under the Grant the Brussels office section. Next week, I will dig into the defense industry and the surging importance of the defense and security sector within the EU R&D funding schemes. It's very interesting. See you next week.